May the Lord truly open our eyes to see the work of His hands. Tonight, we will be meditating from the book of Matthew, chapter 26, verses 36 to 56, and so as Genesis chapter 3, verses 1 to 7. Open your Bibles with me, and we will read Matthew 26, 36 to 46 only, and Genesis chapter 3, verses 1 to 7. The word of the Lord says, "Then Jesus came with them to a place called Gethsemane, and said to his disciples, 'Sit here, where I go over there and pray.' And he took with him Peter and the two sons of Zebedee, and began to be grieved and distressed. Then he said to them, 'My soul is deeply grieved, to the point of death. Remain here and keep watch with me.' And he went a little beyond them and fell on his face and prayed, saying, 'Father, if it is possible, let this cup pass from me. Yet not as I will, but as you will.' And he came to the disciples and found them sleeping and said to Peter, 'So you men could not keep watch with me for an hour? Keep watching and praying that you may not enter into temptation. The spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak.' He went away again a second time and prayed, saying, 'My Father, if this cannot pass away unless I drink it, your will be done.' Again he came and found them sleeping, for their eyes were heavy. And he left them again and went away and prayed a third time, saying the same thing once more. Then he came to the disciples and said to them, 'Are you still sleeping and resting? Behold, the hour is at hand, and the Son of Man is being betrayed into the hands of sinners. Get up, let us be going. Behold, the one who betrays me is at hand.'" We'll proceed with Genesis chapter 3, verses 1 to 7. "Now the serpent was more crafty than any beast of the field, which the Lord had made, and said to the woman, 'Indeed has God said, you shall not eat from any tree of the garden?' The woman said to the serpent, 'From the fruit of the trees of the garden we may eat. But from the fruit of the tree which is in the middle of the garden, God has said, you shall not eat from it or touch it, or you will die.' The serpent said to the woman, 'You surely will not die. For God knows that in the day you eat from it, your eyes will be opened, and you will be like God, knowing good and evil.' When the woman saw that the tree was good for food, and that it was a delight to the eyes, and that the tree was desirable to make one wise, she took from its fruit and ate. And she gave also to her husband with her, and he ate. Then the eyes of both of them were opened, and they knew that they were naked. And they sewed fig leaves together and made themselves loin of coverings." May the good Lord bless the reading of His word. Before I start explaining the text that we read, there is a song, a very popular song entitled "My Way," which I check on the lyrics, and I change some of the lines of the lyrics of that song to make the song more fitted with the message that the Lord has for all of us today. So please set aside a bit your being conservative, because this is a worldly song that represents a lot of what human beings have become as far as making decisions is concerned. This song will tell us a lot of what we have become. So pardon me for using this song as an illustration at the very beginning of the message. And I have asked the praise team to sing this song with the revised lyrics. And I want all of us to take note very closely the lyrics of this song. So let's give our time to the praise team this moment.
And now I'm standing here and so I face my consequences. My friend, I'll make it clear. I'll state my case, of which I'm certain. I've lived a life that's full. I trusted self and followed my way. Yet more, much more than this, I did it my way. Regrets, I've had a lot, but then again, I will not mention. I did what I had to do. I saw it through without supplication. I planned each charted course, each careful step, but there's no prayer. And more, much more than this, I did it my way. Yes, there were times I thought I knew. I just decide on what I should do. But through it all, when there was doubt, I push it on and get it on. I faced it all and I stood tall and did it my way. I've loved all that I do, but I don't feel I have contentment. And now, as I decide, I find it oh so amusing to think I did all that, and may I say, I'm in a shy way. Oh yes, oh it is me. I did it my way. For what is a man away from God? He's still himself, or he has not. He just says things on what he feels, and not the words of someone who kneels. Let the record shows I took all the blows and did it my
Just a reminder, we are not in an evening show here, okay? We are in a worship service. Disclaimer, I intended to not translate, but change some lines of the lyrics to make the song fitted with the message tonight, not for monetization. Okay, let's be clear about that matter. Somebody might charge us here. But here is the thing that I have observed. That song has been very familiar to many of us. Maybe you are you are one of those who sang that before a videoke session, or maybe your house is located near a videoke bar, or you heard someone sang that song several times, especially pag nagse-session ang mga lasenggero. Diba? You often hear that song, but here is something that I have observed. That song speaks a lot of what human beings have become. In terms of decision making, Many times we think that we are the captain of our soul. Many times we imagine that we own ourselves. Many times we think that we are the one who set our path and who determines our future. And thus we tell God, I don't care about you and you should not care about me. I can make my own. I can stand by my own. I don't need you. Where did this start? Paul Anka was the one who put music to the song. And Frank Sinatra was the one who put in the lyrics. And he was the one who popularized it. Maybe sung also by Matt Monroe in the olden days. But the concept of this song originally came from the very, very old time in the garden of the Old Testament. So let me bring all of us this evening to two gardens that are mentioned in the Bible. And let's discover first what happened in the Garden of Eden, where this idea of I did it my way started. We know that God created man. Male and female, He created them. We understand that. It's recorded in Genesis chapters 1 and 2. We understand that when God created man, He did not just leave them to live on their own. We understand that after He created them, He said this line saying, let man become the rulers of what I have created. Meaning to say, He intended that human beings will become the caretaker of whatever He created. The managers, the ruler of His creation. That was God's intention, that we all rule as vice regents to what He created. I mentioned to you before about this idea of vice regents. A vice regent is someone who rules over a place while staying under the authority of a higher power. For example, somebody tells me, I own this land and I want you to rule over that land. So I'll be ruling over that land with a constant consciousness that my authority over the people living in this land and over the land is not absolute, because I live my life under the higher authority who vested upon me, who owns that land that I am lording over. So the idea of man being a ruler of God's creation had to do with that concept of a vice regent. Meaning it's not absolute. Our ruling over the world is not absolute, because you and I are accountable to the owner of the world, to the one who created it. Take note of that idea. But one day, while Adam and Eve were living in the garden, Eve happened to encounter the serpent. And in that moment, the serpent engaged into a conversation with her and said, Eve, is it really true that God told you that you cannot eat from any fruit or from any tree here in this garden? And Eve said, actually, you are wrong with what you perceive. God did not say that we cannot eat from any of the tree here in the garden, but God told us that we shall not eat this particular tree in the middle of the garden, and yet the rest of the trees we can enjoy and be benefited from it. That's what God says. And yet, this tree in the middle, we shall not eat. We shall not even get near it. We shall not touch it, because we will die if we do so. And the serpent tried to twist the mind of Eve and said, really? He said that you're gonna die? It's not true. Not true. So he's making God a liar now. It's not true. You're not gonna die. In fact, Eve, take note of this. If you eat from this tree, your mind will be opened. And then you will get to decide for yourselves which one is evil and which one is good. And then you will become like God. That's how he enticed Eve. Let's look at the text. In Genesis chapter 3, let's look at these verses that I am talking about. Let's read verse 6. When the woman saw that the tree was good for food, and that it was a delight in the eyes, then what happened next? and that the tree was desirable to make one wise, she took from its fruit and ate it. Take note, the temptation here had to do with the physical appearance of the fruit and the tree and the enticing words of the serpent. Why did I say that? You look at the passage. The author said, when the woman saw the tree, meaning to say, there was an enticement as far as the physical appearance of the fruit. I'll repeat about this idea that I have told you a long time ago. The Bible doesn't say that it's an apple. Let's be careful about that. Not an apple. What the Bible is telling us, it's a tree that has a fruit. So we're not sure about what kind of fruit that is. Maybe it's something unique that you and I never find before yet. But that's what the Bible is saying. There was a tree, and the fruit of the tree shall not be eaten. And when Eve looked at that fruit, she was enticed of its beauty, most likely, because that's how it is mentioned here. But not only the physical enticement, because the author tells us that when she looked at the tree, she saw that it was good for something that gives wisdom to life. And where did it come from? That idea of wisdom. It came from the very mouth of the serpent when he said, when you eat, your mind will be opened. Sabi ng mga nagbebenta ng mga products ngayon, open-minded ka ba? Well, the serpent said to Eve, your mind will be opened. And when your mind is opened, you get to decide now which one is evil and good, because you'll know what's evil and good. And if that is the case, you'll become like God. In other words, what the serpent was saying to them is that you'll become like God, making decisions for yourselves. So this is now a contradictory with what God intended, that they will rule the garden as vice regents, because a vice regent would wait for God's dictation. They would wait for God's instructions, and when God tells them, you can go to that place and clean that area, and they will go as rulers of that place, they will do what God tells them to do. And when God tells them you can eat from the tree, they'll not disobey Him. They'll eat, and then when God says don't eat, they'll not eat. That's how a vice regent is supposed to be. But the serpent came to Eve and said, you'll become like God. You'll decide for yourself. In other words, you can make decisions now for yourselves away from the instruction of the God who created you, because you'll be on the same level with Him. That was enticing. And so Eve took the fruit, ate it, and shared it with her husband. And from that time on, man started making decisions for himself. Yes, it is true that God has given human beings the free will. But the problem was that right there in the garden, that free will was not used properly according to God's intention. Because how does God wanted that free will to be used is that man will use that free will to choose that his will be under or subjugated by God's will. So he's supposed to choose to be under the will of God, but Adam and Eve chose to be away from the will of God. When they ate the fruit, it was their way of saying, God, it's over. You have been deciding for us in these past moments of life. What we want this time is we'll make decisions for ourselves. So you stay aside. Don't bother us. Don't mind us anymore, because we can do it. We're going to make decisions based on the wisdom that we have acquired by eating this fruit. It was actually staying away from the will, the perfect will of God. And that was the decision. From that time onwards, what happened? When they were out of the garden, disobedience went on. A brother killed his brother. And next to that, humanity was filled with sinfulness and evil, that during the time of Noah, God has to cleanse the entire world because of the sin of humanity. You see, it all started when Adam and Eve said, we'll do it our way. We'll do it our way. Stay aside. Stay aside. Many people in the world today don't acknowledge the reality of God's existence. And some of them would even speak in mockery, saying that we don't need you. If you're true, you come here. Show yourself. They don't take the advice of God. They don't even listen because they don't believe in God after all. And sad to say, there are even people on the planet today who believes that there is God existing and that this God is not functioning the way God intends to function for their lives. Why? Because for them, even if they believe the existence of God, they think that they are the gods of themselves. Why did I say that? Because people nowadays would make decisions without even asking the God who knows all things. There is a video that I released on my channel, the channel Words That Build. And I mentioned there in one of those videos that oftentimes even believers would fall into this kind of mindset. The mindset of I did it my way or I'll do it my way. Because many times Christians would say to the Lord, Lord, I have made a decision already. I will be engaging with this business. I will be investing in this matter. And then now that I have made that decision, bless the business. This is my decision. I want you to be with me as I run this business. That's how oftentimes when we communicate with God, there are times that we look at an opportunity coming to us, a job is offered, and instead of going to God and asking Him, we make decision looking at the offer that it gives to us. Wow, it gives a 6-digit salary. This is something that we don't need to pray anymore. 6 digits, imagine that. And we make the decision, yes, I'll get this job. And then we tell the Lord, Lord, I'm going to this company, I have made that decision. Make me a blessing into this place because I am a missionary in this office. Then bless me all the more. Give me wisdom, Lord, as I engage with this kind of work that I have decided to be in. But is that right after all? Is that right that we go to God and just tell Him what we have decided about and ask Him to bless us? And sometimes we even command Him to be with us. Is it right? I think it's not. Because what's the right thing? Is that we come to God asking Him. Because at the end of the day, He knows all things. He sees what we don't see yet. And we ought to consult Him. Prayer is not giving information to God. Prayer is consultation with Him. We ask Him, Lord, there is an opportunity that comes into my life. I really like this. If you ask me, Lord, I really like this. And if you ask me why, well, it gives much. It pays much. Who wouldn't like it? But as your child, I am coming to you in prayer. And I want to ask if this is your will. That's how prayer should be. As far as decision making is concerned. But as I have said, it became a problem of all human beings that we tell God what we want, and at the end of the day, we become the gods of ourselves because we just decide for ourselves. But you know what? That problem that started in the Garden of Eden was resolved by Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane. In the New Testament time, there was a garden in the city of Jerusalem, just outside the city walls. While we were there, I observed that it was not really that huge. Maybe it's as big as the lot area of Zikaek, maybe around 3,000 square meters, or a little bit bigger than that. We walk around the Garden of Gethsemane. We don't exactly know if it was the same size during the time of Jesus, but at least we were able to visit there and see the place. And one moment, after they celebrated the Passover meal, after Jesus instituted the Lord's Supper, the one that we will be celebrating later, He said to His disciples, Peter, James, and John, He told them, go with me to the garden. I'll be praying there. So the 4 of them went to the garden, and when they arrived there, Jesus told them, stay here, I'll go further, and I'm going to pray. Listen very carefully to what Jesus said in his prayer. Look at Matthew 26, verse 39. And he went a little beyond them and fell on his face and prayed, saying, listen to these words, my Father, if it is possible, let this cup pass from me. Yet not as I will, but as you will. I'll repeat the last line. My Father, if it is possible, let this cup pass from me, yet not as I will, but your will, as you will. And then he left, went back to his disciples, and he found them sleeping. And he reprimanded them, and then after saying some words, he went back and prayed again. And listen to what he said in verse 42. When he prayed, he said this short line, my Father, if this cannot pass away unless I drink it, listen to these words, your will be done. And then the Bible tells us that he did again, went back to his disciples and went back again to pray the same idea that he prayed. In other words, 3 times that he uttered before the Father, not my will, but your will. I am now subjecting myself, my will, to your will, Father. Thus, even if this is difficult for me, even if I'm gonna suffer, even if I don't like that idea of the sin being carried by the Holy Son of God, I will allow myself to go through this because this is your will. This is actually a reversal of what happened in the Garden of Eden. Because in the garden, Adam and Eve somehow declared, we don't need you to make decisions for us. We can decide for our own. We will make it and do it our way. And yet Jesus, in that suffering moment, in that painful situation where he was feeling the agony of his impending death when he would carry the sin of the world, he said to the Father, your will be done. Not as I will, but as you will. You will, your will be done. It is a subjection to the will of the Father. And I think this is how Christians should relate with God. Because when we come to Him, we don't dictate Him what He must do. Because if that is the case, He's not God at all and we are the gods after all. But we come to Him and present to Him all that we are and depend on what He's going to make in a form of a decision that He will bring into our lives. And we will say, Lord, I'll not do it my way. I'll do it your way. Because when God's children submit to the will of God, they'll do things God's way. I'll repeat that line. When God's children submit to the will of God, they'll do things God's way. There are many believers who don't do things God's way. Why? Because in the first place, there is no subjection to the will of God as far as our lives and will is concerned. Because we often think that we can do it by ourselves. We can make decisions because we're the captain of our soul. We determine the direction of our lives. We can make it away from God. But Jesus is telling us, no, not my son, not my daughter. You can't do it. You can only do it when you consult God, when you let your will be subjected to the perfect will of the Father. The problem is that when we don't subject our will to the Father, we also do not do things in His way. We will end up like the song of Frank Sinatra. I did it my way. And I pray that you and I will not sing that song regretting for the mistakes that you have done. May this be a guiding principle for us, that at the end of the day, we will sing to the Lord, I will do it your way. With this, submit your will to the Father and start doing His will and in His way in your life. God bless you all and good evening.